Now, to the debate itself, Mr. Peterson has the affirmative that Christianity shouldn't be in government. He qualified American government, which I agree to. He just went over that himself. I'm completely uninterested in any tangential debate that Mr. Peterson actually wants to have, which is just God isn't real, though, which means nothing in this debate. To start with, I'd like to bring up the country most libs point to as the happiest in the world, Finland. In the happiest country in the world, there exist two state churches. Yes, that's right, two. Both of these bodies have the ability to levy taxes. The taxes paid by members of the two churches and the rates determined on the parish level. While the government collects the taxes, the two churches pay for the cost of collecting them and receive the amounts paid. These go to fund the maintenance, repair of churches and public services such as record keeping, funeral services, and many others. We would call this a form of symphonia in Orthodoxy. The idea of the church working hand in hand with the state, represented by a two-headed eagle. Now, here in the USA, you can imagine that the government levying a tax at the behest of the church and then collecting it along with normal income taxes would be something Mr. Peterson wouldn't like very much. It's an example of the church and government working just fine. But wait, there's more. Since these are two different churches, one the Orthodox Church, the other a Lutheran church, you would think there would be significant social problems. He brought this up in his opening. Quite the contrary. That's odd considering their dogmas and doctrines are so removed from each other, isn't it? Yet, by all accounts, these two bodies, while they engage in rigorous debate, generally work hand in hand towards the general good and welfare of the peoples of their nation. Mr. Peterson will claim in this debate that there are so many different denominations of religions. How did I predict that? How could we possibly choose which one would represent us? Yet, all of those denominations exist in Finland, and they're doing fine. The happiest people on earth, supposedly. Yet, they have Buddhism, Hindus, Jews, Catholics, Anglicans, Islamics, all under the same roof of a nation, with two denominations being officially recognized as state churches, and those churches having a say in actual policy making. This should be some kind of nightmare for Mr. Peterson, but it seems to work so good that they're the happiest people in the world. Go figure. Now to U.S. policy, try to understand that our nation itself isn't divorced from religion any more than Finland, and never has been. There's simply an establishment clause saying the federal government can't favor one religion over another or prohibit the free exercise of it. Interestingly, they still can. One way is they simply don't recognize a religion as valid, and they do this by not recognizing the church as legitimate and not recognizing them as a church and giving them the same status as other churches. Which, by the way, they do all the time. The IRS has official rules for what a church is. In fact, it includes creeds, forms of worship. It's super extensive. Now to the arguments themselves for Christianity being in government. One, the early history of the United States is one that tells a different story than modern secularists would have you believe, like Mr. Peterson. The founders in shaping this constitutional republic referenced Deuteronomy more than any other philosophy. This study was cited by the American Political Science Review and is noted by the C.S. Lewis Institute, who remarked this. This is also a book that records God's dealings with the chosen nation, especially in establishing the political and legal institutions necessary to govern a nation. Now, we can find text in the New Testament that deals with government. Think Romans 13, for example, and it gives us a sense of the duties of citizenship and the like. But what we find in the book of Moses and in that condensed version of Deuteronomy is the nuts and bolts of how do you make the establishment of a nation. This is direct proof, by the way, end quote. This is direct proof the Bible was indeed used heavily to determine government structure itself. My second argument is that most states that are founding already had state religions, and that you had to swear oaths to Christianity to even hold office. The Constitution was ratified 1788, and there were still states with official state religions, which makes it laughable that under the 10th Amendment, they didn't allow states to have state religions, because they clearly did. Our founders were fully aware of this fact, stating the Constitution was for a moral and religious public. Quote, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. John Adams. Adams is talking about men who believe like Mr. Peterson, by the way. 9 of these states required a sworn oath that Jesus Christ is Lord, in fact. There didn't seem to be very much confusion. My third argument is that the entire United States is already run like a religious institution. Men with ceremonial black robes who sit on high pedestals judge the people on judging days. Other men in black ceremonial robes give and interpret the law. We have national anthems, the etymology of which are liturgical hymns. We have dogmatic beliefs in every sense of the word. Dogmas around patriotism, American exceptionalism, a strict adherence to the concept of rights, an invisible metaphysical concept, which isn't true, but we put faith in it anyway. We persecute heretics. We call them communists and socialists and people who, quote, want to destroy our way of life. Anybody who goes against the law of the land is interpreted by the lawgivers and the law interpreters in the black robes, and they will be persecuted for it. Things like rights and other dogmas are forced on the population as a way in which they must live their life, as a sense of normative claims. Our politicians take oaths of office, often given on the Bible itself, but the fact they are giving oaths at all infers there'll be some kind of divine intervention to that oath breaker. They give oaths of office just like they used to. I would argue the entire system is religious and dogmatic in its very nature, and Peterson will have to explain why those dogmas are incompatible with Christianity or reject it, or in any way wouldn't be made better by it. My fourth argument is that blind justice makes no sense. It makes no sense absent the Christian view. This concept is uniquely biblical. Neither rich nor poor judge them the same. In a non-Christian view, there isn't really any reason at all for justice to be meted out the way we mete it out. An eye for an eye or serious punishment is just as reasoned for justice as forgiveness and rehabilitation. Why can't a rapist be castrated or graped himself for the crime of grape? Why not murder the murderer? This is every bit in conformance to reason as the current justice code, except the current one still relies on Christian ethics. I have 6 more arguments after this, but I think that that's probably as much as I can fit in for my opening. But let me address a couple things before we get to the cross-examination. I agree with Mr. Peterson. He can't get an ought from an is, but then he makes this really bizarre claim. He said, Peterson says, I'm at the mercy of a should claim, but he's at the mercy of a shouldn't claim, which is also an ought claim. I don't know if he knows this or not. When you say you should not do thing, that's also an ought claim, just like saying you should do a thing. So saying we should not have Christianity in government is making a normative claim. It's literally making an ought claim. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about there, but we can get into it. What can you do when you can't criticize Islam, he says, or Christianize Islam or Christianize these people? What do they do in Finland, where all of these different denominations live together and there's 2 state religions? Well, what happens is the 10th Amendment goes into effect, and it's up to the ethics of the population to put in the religion that they choose. Also, he says Christian ethics are barred from government, and that's actually kind of just counterintuitive and stupid. If you vote your conscience and you're Christian, that's Christian ethics. Just like that, that's Christian ethics. If you're a politician and you're voting based on your normative ethical framework and you're a Christian, you're going to be voting against abortion bills. You're going to be voting against tax bills. You're going to be voting for all sorts of different things, which you're going to rely heavily on your actual ethical framework, which is Christianity. It's already there. It's already there. And does he want to get rid of it? No. What he'll say instead is, no, I'm fine if Christians utilize the Constitution by voting in other Christians who can then amend the Constitution. So it's like, he can't even tell me that they shouldn't be there. He'll actually have to say that they should. And with that, I'll cede my time. We can get into the cross-examination.